Looks like we're live, my friends, on the Bradley J. Show, and we're with Maine man Micah. He's Micah, and he is from Maine. That is his handle or name when he appears on the podcast Airplane Geeks. He's an aviation expert. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be here, Bradley. It's always fun to join you and join all your listeners. You got a great group of people listening to you.
Thank you. Now, you are truly an airplane geek, in addition to contributing to the podcast. Give people an idea of how much you love airplanes.
You know, I've been fortunate enough to fly all over the country and to Europe a couple of times, and I love traveling whenever I can. In fact, I'm doing another podcast that I think I told you about with my good friend Pasadena Brian, and The Journey is the Reward podcast, where he's working on and will be completing within the next month his lifetime 1K status, having flown 3 million in-seat miles on United Airlines, which will give him his lifetime 1K status. And I can't believe he's done it. I can't believe he's doing it, but that's what's happening. But yeah, ever since I was a kid, I loved aircraft.
Now, do you stand to benefit from his labors? Can he take you with him on some trips?
He could. One of the advantages of lifetime 1K status is that you can name one person each year that will also get those exact same benefits. Now, my guess is he's going to probably, give that to his wife, but his wife doesn't like to travel.
Yeah, so that would be a waste.
Yeah, so it would be a waste. So maybe, who knows?
My theory is this. He's going to offer it. She'll accept for 1 year, and it'll be clear that it was a waste, and you'll get it next year.
That would be great.
A weird thing about you, I think, is, well, not weird, different, is that, as you mentioned, the journey is the reward, not only for your friend Pasadena Brian, but you. You know, you don't really care where you go as long as you get on a plane and go.
Well, that's something, we've talked about a whole lot because, you love to travel, and that's one reason why we became friends. And you like to pick places to go and go there. And I often send you deals. I find great deals going out of Boston, and I'm going through them usually and every night. And I'll send you a text late at night saying, hey, look at this one. Hey, look at that one.
And we'll share some of those deals later on.
Sure.
And Micah sends them to me without regard to where I want to go, because I don't really know where I want to go, and it may not be till I see the deal, that I realize, hey, I could go there.
And that's one way to find great deals, and we can talk about this a little bit more. But there are it's always two kinds of people. But you want to pick out a place to go, and then you try to find a deal for it, or you can try to find a deal and then decide why you want to go there.
Right. That's like going to Filene's Basement or a vintage shop. If you go looking for something, you're not going to find it. But if you go with an open mind, you might say, oh, wow, that's perfect for me. So we'll get to some deals later. Other things we'll get to today. For years, they looked into the incidents for the 737 MAX, a couple of fatal incidents, maybe two or three.
There were two.
And also severe turbulence and the result of that, and how you can avoid the results, the rather sobering results of turbulence if it's severe. So let's do the 737 MAX. Remind people what happened, and remind them of the early speculation, and then tell them of the most recent finding.
Well, Boeing designed a 737 has been around since the 1960s, and the 737 has been expanded and expanded and expanded. It's been stretched. It's been turned into a completely different plane than what it was. And Boeing wanted to make it still even bigger, mostly because Southwest flies them exclusively, and Southwest wanted a slightly better, more updated aircraft. But some of the rules that Southwest gave them is that we don't want to retrain our pilots. So when they made the plane larger, they had to bring it up a little higher, bring the engines a little forward, and it turned out it had some slightly different maneuvering characteristics. But without wanting to retrain the pilots, Boeing created this system called the Maneuvering Characteristics Adjustment System that automatically trimmed the airplane so that it would fly without the pilots having to be aware or go through a different training, different control surfaces.
Until they needed to fly it manually.
Until they needed to fly it manually, and they found, or so they said, that it couldn't be turned off. And this was an issue with Lion Air. It was the first time it happened. Lion Air flying a 737 MAX. They had some issues with it because there was a single point of failure in this MCAS system. They had some issues with it one day. The pilots flew it. They recovered from the issues. There wasn't, and everything was fine. And the next day, the same issue came up, and the plane crashed, and it brought down Lion Air. And then 3 months later, and they weren't sure what had happened. They didn't want to blame it on the pilots. They thought it was a maneuvering characteristics system, MCAS. And then about 3 or 4 months later, the same thing happened with Ethiopian Airlines, and the aircraft came down, and they blamed it on the MCAS system, and that's when the FAA grounded the 737 MAX until Boeing could come up with something to improve the MCAS system. Well, the final report finally came out on the Ethiopian Airlines crash. And the EAIB, the Ethiopian Accident Investigations Board, blamed it all on MCAS. But at the same time, I'm sorry, EAB is the French organization that's similar to our NTSB. The Ethiopian Accident Investigation Board, the EAIB, blamed it all on MCAS, but then also looking at it, because whenever a U.S. plane crashes, the NTSB gets involved with it. They looked at it as well, as did the EAB, the French Accidents Investigation Board, that actually looked at all the flight data controllers. And both the NTSB and the EAB, independently, without discussing it with each other, and the groups don't necessarily get along, they found that the issue had a lot to do with pilot error.
So what was the error, and was it related to trying to fly the plane manually?
Well, Boeing had sent out an update on a manual update on how to fly the plane and what to do in case the MCAS system starts to take over. And they sent that out approximately a month. Well, it was 3 months before. I take that back. It was about a month before this accident happened. And apparently Ethiopian Airlines didn't distribute this, or the pilots that were flying it didn't read it. They were low-time pilots, and they didn't follow the procedures.
Okay, I have to say, before we get too far from this, that it's still a matter of Boeing making a plane and Southwest not wanting to train the pilots. The pilots weren't trained, correct? Still weren't trained. They got a memo on what to do. That's not training.
That's exactly how most things happen, and that's how, in terms of there's training, and then there's updates in terms of what your actual procedures are. And you don't necessarily need to be trained on a quick updated procure. Pulling a fuse.
I mean, let's say there's an emergency. You need your reaction, your reflexes to kick in, and I think I read a memo a week back about something new to do in the situation. I don't want him to try to be thinking, he or she, to try to be thinking back to the memo. It has to be trained in, I think. I maintain. It's still trying to cheap out on training.
Well, and that would have been included in the follow-up training, because pilots are, they have to go through every 6 months a completely recertification, and that would have been included in that.
All right, well, good.
But these pilots didn't follow it, and what was interesting is that other pilots did follow it. What wasn't talked about at the time, it didn't want to be.
Did they say why they didn't follow it?
No, we don't know. The pilots aren't here to even discuss it. So we don't know why they didn't follow it.
It seems like if they'd been properly trained, that they would have followed it.
Well, one of the things that they did that was in this particular incident is that they were at takeoff speed, they were at full throttle, and which makes the control surfaces much more difficult to maneuver. They never came off full throttle, which was part of the problem. And that's a basic thing, no matter where no matter what's going on. And because of political correctness, we didn't want to at the time blame the pilots, third world airlines, third world pilots. But it turns out that these pilots were not necessarily, again, they had some short time. They weren't necessarily as experienced in the aircraft. And this aircraft had flown throughout the U.S. for quite some time without any incidents at any point. But it just happened to happen in these third world airlines.
Is there any actual evidence that people confirm that it was because of political correctness? Or are we all just assuming that?
We're just assuming that's what it is. It was not discussed, and I was in situations where we were talking about this, and I was told, you can't bring up pilot training. You can't bring that up. It's not. These pilots are trained just as well as anybody else, and perhaps that's true.
Are they?
Theoretically, they are.
So are all countries training equal? No.
If they're flying
Are
into the
some
USA,
better than
there's a
others?
I would prefer to, I would prefer not to fly with some third world airlines. But on
Oh,
the other
why?
hand, some third world airlines are actually hiring U.S. trained pilots.
Okay.
So it depends on the airline. Typically,
All right.
I'm not that worried about it.
Okay. So pilot error in things other than things sort of unrelated to the MCAS system.
Right.
Okay. So next, let's talk about the turbulence, which has probably a more immediate, is of more immediate interest to everybody. You had a turbulence fatality and a lot of injuries and pretty scary looking photos. What's going on?
Yeah, there was a Lufthansa flight recently going from Texas to, I can't remember whether it was Paris or Germany, but nonetheless, it had to divert into Washington, D.C. Matthew McConaughey happened to be on it.
What?
As well, yeah, he was on it at the time. He posted some photos and videos of it, and they hit some clear air turbulence. And there were about 7 people that were taken to the hospital that were injured pretty severely. There was a baby that was ripped out of the arms of the mother holding it and flew up in the air. Fortunately, was caught and apparently was fine. But it was some very severe clear air turbulence, which can happen.
What is that?
When you're flying along, there can be turbulence, clear air, some patches of different temperature air that's mixing together. It causes clear air turbulence. It doesn't cause clouds. It's not necessarily visible on radar. And when you see it, it can really toss the plane around.
So different clumps of air of different density?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So anyway, this happened just recently. That was, I think it's about a week ago. And then just this week, there was a private jet, a Challenger 300, that took off from Keene, New Hampshire, and was on its way to D.C., I believe, and it had to stop at Hartford because there was some severe turbulence, or so they say. And in fact, one of the passengers died. And this passenger happened to be an advisor to former presidents. And she was rushed to the hospital and died.
Do you know what the injury was? Was it a head injury or neck injury?
I don't know. That hasn't been reported from what I have seen.
Wow.
But, it's a well-known aircraft, and they think it was clear air turbulence. They also think that it might not have been turbulence, and it might have been something to do with with an airworthiness directive that about Bombardier aircraft regarding the stabilization trim. There's a fault that pilots are supposed to go through, and that's being investigated right now. But this is what the point is from both of those things, is that clear air, the injuries, especially really difficult injuries, can be avoided under almost every situation if you're wearing your seatbelt while you're in the seat. Now, granted, there's going to be times, the seatbelt sign isn't on, and there's going to be times you need to get up out of your seat. You need to use the lav. You need to be walking down the aisle to get there. And yes, injuries are going to happen there. But the majority of these injuries took place from people who were sitting. They were sitting, but they didn't have their seatbelt on. And the pilots will always give in their announcement. I've almost always heard it. They say, just like we do up front, we always have our seatbelt on, low around our waist, loosely to keep us protected in case anything should happen. And that's what all passengers should do. If you're in your seat, there's no reason not to wear your seatbelt.
Right.
But there is one other thing that needs to be considered, and that is what they call lap babies, lap children. You're allowed to bring your child, if I believe they're under 3 years old, on the aircraft and have them sit on your lap and not pay for a seat. Now, that's perfectly legal according to the FAA. But if your child is under 3 years old and in a car, you're not allowed to have that child in the car on your lap. You need to have it in a baby seat. You need to have it strapped in. It's not legal to have it in a car. Sometimes I would say it is more dangerous in clear air turbulence on a plane. Can you imagine holding your kid and having it ripped from your arms from this turbulence and jumping up, flying up into the air, and then, thank God, it was caught. But how frightening that is and how dangerous it is for the child, but not only for the child, but in a situation like that or in an accident, that child becomes a projectile and can hit somebody else. So this is something that the FAA really needs to be looking into. The lap children is, I understand why the airlines want it, because there are people that just won't fly if they have to buy an extra seat for their kid. But really, in terms of safety, it's something that needs to happen.
Maybe they should reconsider flying. I mean, do you really need to fly? I fly a lot less. Are there any moves to remedy what I consider to be both a physically unhealthy situation and hazardous safety-wise, situation with cramping of seats. It's definitely not good for you to be all buckled up in a fetal position because your seat pitch is only
28 inches. Yeah.
And also, there's no way you're going to be able to evacuate a plane when you're cramped in like that. Just you can't even load it or unload it quickly. In an emergency, forget about it. It's just theater if you can't get out of your seat.
That is definitely being looked at, and there are people who are bringing it up to Congress, and I believe that Secretary Pete is discussing this regularly, from what I understand, and hopefully, it will be looked at. But again, the airlines, who have a big lobbying force, are against it, because the more passengers they get on the plane, the more money they make on that plane. An empty seat costs them money.
So, if that unsafe situation exists because airlines have a lot of lobbying dollars, that's just corruption.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Which makes us a corrupt nation.
Well, this would be a good topic if you hosted maybe an overnight radio show. I think we could go on with that for a long time.
I know this is not the only area where we're corrupt, and it's not a new thing that we are corrupt. However, to pretend it's not thoroughly corrupt is ridiculous. I don't get why lobbying is legal. Why,
I completely agree. In fact, when I was quite younger and I would wear, when political buttons were really popular, I used to wear one that said corporate lobbyists eat their young.
Yeah, so the argument will be made that money is speech and that lobbying is the act of free speech, expressing your desire, but that's BS, because if money is speech, that means that some people have more free speech than others.
Exactly.
And that is not fair. And that's another thing that's just really wrong about our government. So there you go. Money is not speech. I know we're getting off the direct course, but that's certainly relevant. Okay, let's talk about some deals, Micah. Maine man Micah from Maine and the Airplane Geeks podcast. Make sure you check out the Airplane Geeks podcast. They're serious geeks. They really get into the airplane stuff. Super, super well. I love it.
And this week's show that came out today, we had an expert on loyalty programs on to talk about all the great points you can get and how you can sometimes transfer them with hotels and with airlines and all that stuff. It was an interesting conversation. It's one I really enjoyed.
Do you engage in loyalty programs?
I used to. When I flew, a lot more than I do now. I do have some loyalty points with some hotels, but we talked about the fact that they've used to recruit people and to keep people honest or keep people with that airline, but there comes to a point where people don't care anymore once you get. We talked about, again, my friend Brian, who's going to have his 3 million miles lifetime 1K status. It's going to be very freeing because once he has that lifetime status, he can fly with any airline. There's no sense in staying with United anymore.
So those benefits apply to any airline?
The benefits apply to any of the Star Alliance airlines, or a lot of them do. But it's not like right now he flies on United constantly to build up those points. Right. But then if he finds a really good deal, like we're going to talk about now on another airline, it's not like he's saying, well, if I fly on United, I'll get more. Right. I can fly on this airline.
So here's what happened to me. I did American loyalty program, but then they started messing with it, changing the amounts of miles you needed for a reward and having expiration dates change, and I found myself being a slave to one airline. And if you could either go on this airline for the points or go on a better deal, go somewhere else. I felt like a prisoner, and that they were messing with the benefits, so it wasn't worth it. So I get rid of it. Then, probably not too long after that, I started quite a lot of European travel, and it always seemed to be on the same airline, even the same flight. The particular flight out of Boston on Lufthansa that goes. I was on that same flight all the time, and I didn't get any of the benefits because I didn't do the loyalty program. So I joined their loyalty program, and then poof, COVID came, and so I'm screwed if I do and screwed if I don't. It never seems to work out for me. So now I don't know what to do. I do the loyalty program, but just out of a chore. I never expect to get anything from it. And I'm not going to be held prisoner to it. If somebody else has got a better deal, fine. I'll go on that one and then join their loyalty program.
No, exactly. That's how I am. The loyalty program I have the most points with right now happens to be a hotel program, and I stay in that hotel when I can find it if the rate's good, But and I'll collect the points, and I even have a credit card from that program that I pay for because it gives me one free night a year, and it's worth it for the amount that I pay for the card. And I use it once a year to make sure that my points don't disappear. But when I'm traveling, and I travel around the country, I always look for the best deal on a hotel. I'm not necessarily. I mean, if that particular hotel
Right.
chain is the one that I want, I'll take it. And if it's within a few dollars, I'll take it. But I'm going to look at the best deal on the hotel for where I want to go.
What about hotwire.com, or do you do that?
No, I like to know the hotel I'm going into. I'll look for what I'll do is I'll look for the price on Hotwire if I can find the actual hotel, or I'll look for the price in other places. But then I'll call the hotel directly, or I'll call the hotel 800 number, and I'll say, "Look, I found it here. Are you going to match it, or am I going to go someplace else?" And
what
typically
do they
match
say?
it. Typically they'll match it, and then
Really?
I'm booking directly with the hotel.
All right.
Takes a little more work, but
Oh, this is a time when I need to share with you a horror story.
uh-oh.
Yeah, I told you about it, and it would be crazy not to bring it up now. So, a person who was a frequent guest of mine and remained a friend, a walking partner, and just a cool person, went on a trip with her fiance recently, and they were going to Scotland. They did go. They're in Scotland now, I think. It is my understanding, and I this is hearsay, of course, and I maybe I didn't understand clearly, but from what I understand, I am told that she arrived at the airport and the airline, to get on the plane and go on their merry way to their big vacation, and they said, "Oh, this is booked on the wrong day." And she said, "Well, we booked on the right day, see?" And they said, "Oh, your third-party ticket purchaser people," and I'm not going to name them, screwed up and changed it somehow. So too bad. You can't go today, and you're going to have to pay an extra $600. I don't know whether it was each or for the two of them, probably for the two of them, extra as well. So they lost a day. Time and distance. They lost
Yeah.
stroke and distance. They lost the money and a day. And so the rule here is, the lesson here is for all, and this is a valuable lesson. Book, regardless of where you check for approximate fares, book only through the airline itself. Are we correct?
Absolutely. We are 100% correct. And, you and I, we use Google Flights. It's one of my favorite ways to check fares. It has its glitches, but it works really well. It's simple to use.
I agree. It's glitchy. It gives you a general idea. That
Right.
destination is pretty expensive versus that one, which is pretty cheap.
Right. But when you buy from Google Flights, oftentimes you'll see the price and it'll say buying through this as opposed to buying directly with the airline. Always go with the airline, because the airline is then responsible for you, as opposed to this third-party site, whatever it happens to be, which they may not even exist by the time your flight comes up. So,
Yeah. Do you get a little paranoid when you're booking flights? Fear of making a mistake? Like, I made a mistake on the date. Oh, I made a mistake on the flight. This is not the one I wanted. But this one has a 12-hour layover. That's not the one I wanted. I wanted the one with the 90-minute layover. Have you
Yeah.
ever made a mistake? I never have, but I'm scared to death every time.
I've never made one either, but I am looking very, very carefully. And in fact, I think our audience can know, we've spoken on the phone as we were booking flights together, and
Right.
we're both looking at the same thing, and we're both making sure and being so careful that we're clicking on the right stuff at the right time.
Right.
And it's, really, really, it can be difficult because it's confusing.
I have a new policy. I don't book alone. I have someone else watching me over the shoulder. Oh, is that the right date? Yes. Check. Right date. Right return date? Check. Right this, right that. And one thing that confuses me a little bit is some airlines, like probably Lufthansa, they do the day and the month in reverse. So that just throws a little bit of a monkey wrench in there. If it's December 10th, it's not 12/10 there, it's 10/12. Whatever it is, they do it backwards.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
that and every once in a while I go, "Oh my God, I made a mistake." Oh, no, that's just the dates being backwards. Some airlines give you 24 hours to check stuff over in case you made a mistake, I guess.
Most airlines will do that. I believe it's required in the U.S., although some airlines will also try to fake you out because even though it might be required, they say, do you want to save this for just $10? And I don't believe you need to spend that $10 or whatever it's going to be, whatever that fee is. I think you've got 24 hours regardless to change it, although I got to double check that. Don't listen to me. Don't take my word on it. Double check it because I've got to double check it before I say it for sure.
So how do you feel about this new trend thing that's been going on for a couple of years where they'll show you a cheap fare, but if you want to choose your seat at all, if you want to not sit in the middle, in other words, oh, well, that you're going to have to get another level up, and that's going to be another couple $100 if you want to choose your seat. And then to choose a decent seat, you got to pay. That just buys you the privilege of choosing your seat. Then to actually choose it is more money.
That's the race to the bottom is what we're calling it with the ultra low cost carriers, and I tend to refer to as the ultra low service carriers. But what's nice is that they've had so much success that even the major airlines are offering that in their what do they call it? Their extra economy, or the lowest economy. It's like there's economy, and then there's economy minus, and then there's economy plus, and then there's business
there's economy
and first.
light. Happily,
Yeah.
I never need to check a bag, so I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I care desperately about my seat. I
And
just
right, and with the cheapest economy fares,
You don't
like
choose.
you don't choose. You got to just go whatever you can get. So
yeah. Okay, so we have a question here from Joe. Joe is a engineering type, and he is asked the question: what's your opinion on the recent spate of runway incursions? It's just bad luck, right?
Well, it's funny Joe would bring that up because I've been talking about this with some of my fellow aviation geeks, and there has been a number of incursions, a number of things that we have heard about in the news. It's made the major news feeds, and it's all over. But what I'm curious about, and it does look like it's going up, but I'm wondering how much experimental bias is involved in that. Meaning, we now have Flight Radar 24. We have all these ways of monitoring these things, and we're watching it more closely now because people do it for a hobby, and we have social media. So I'm wondering if the numbers have actually increased, or is it the reporting on it that's really increased, and we're more aware of it?
So when you say experimental bias, do you mean confirmation bias? Like we're looking for it, and you find what you look for?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying I'm curious about it, and I think that needs to be looked at as well. But there have definitely been some major glitches and some almost serious accidents. And hopefully, the FAA is looking at this as well as the airlines, and they just need to watch out what's going on. One of the problems that I wouldn't say problems. One of the changes that's happening is that this day and age, aircraft are so automated that pilots are operating the aircraft more than they are flying it. There's not as much airmanship as there once was, and people aren't being trained in flying or airmanship as much as they have been trained in how to operate the aircraft because it's so many computers. So I also wonder, I'm not saying this for sure, but I also wonder how much of it is actual airmanship that's disappearing versus people operating an aircraft that are following the computer glitches and don't have the same situational awareness.
So what's airmanship? Stuff like knowing protocols on the tarmac and stuff like that?
It's it's that innate sense of having flown and being trained to have that complete situational awareness to know what it's like. That it's not seat of the pants flying, but it's being able to fly that way, to have that feeling around you.
It's intuitive,
Right.
reaction. It's Sully Sullenberger stuff, or you've flown a million military sorties, and you got a sense of, as you say, situational awareness.
Right, and a lot of our training now is on simulators, and simulators are great, but and they're a lot cheaper to learn on a simulator than it is to actually be in the air. But a simulator isn't being in the air. It feels like you're in the air. It's a lot of fun. I've seen them, and they're great. And I'm talking about full motion simulators even, but it's not being in the air. It's a different kind of thing.
Okay, we got some interest here. It's pretty good. Let's see. We have another question. Jim asks, is Spirit a bad airline? That's a matter of opinion, but we can give you an opinion. What about JetBlue buying them and the AG suit against it? Yeah. So why does the AG say no?
Well, JetBlue set up before. There are two suits going on with the AG against JetBlue. One is with Spirit, and Spirit, I wouldn't say it's a bad airline. It's an airline I wouldn't fly. It's an ultra low cost carrier or an ultra low service carrier. They fly to alternate airports. They may say they're going to Orlando, but it may be the airport that's 30 miles outside of Orlando.
Yes.
And
I'd say it's a maybe I'll take a bus airline.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
cheap, but if you want to get there cheap, take a bus. It's a sure thing.
Exactly. But then Spirit also has what they call, I think it was the great big seats, or the big seats up front, which is a premium.
Do they have big seats up front?
They used to, and I think they still do. They only don't have a lot of them, but
They don't have a lot of planes either. If one breaks, you're out of luck, right?
And that's what it is with the ultra low cost carriers. Frontier is very similar to that. I can't remember the name of the one. Sun Country is like that. They're not bad airlines. They just have a different model. And if I would rather go on an airline that is going to give me a little more service.
I would also like airlines to name their airlines with a little more seriousness. I don't want to go on Play Airlines. I don't want to go on an airline named Play. I want it to have a serious name like Awesome, or not Awesome, but something like Eagle Airlines. Something at least aviation oriented. Play makes it sound like it's run by a spring break party organization or something.
There's a major airline in Europe.
Gross.
A friend of mine flies for them, and they're a great airline. They really are, but their name is Wizz. Do you want to fly on an airline named Wizz?
No.
Neither do I.
Are they a great airline? That's one of those. It's like a Spirit airline that goes east-west instead of north-south, right?
Well, it's European, and they are an ultra low cost carrier, but their service is very good, and I know that their pilots are really good because my buddy is a training pilot, and I know what kind of an expert pilot he is. So I feel pretty good about them. But what the suit is that JetBlue has basically merged with American, with Northeast Alliance. So this is sort of they've turned into a big airline. You might book a ticket on JetBlue and you might actually be flying on American, which is sad because JetBlue, founded by David Neelam, was created to be a low-cost, full-service airline. American is not necessarily great service, even though it's one of the majors. So anyway, they have this Northeast Alliance set up, and now JetBlue wants to buy Spirit, which is going to it's going to turn them into the fifth biggest airline in the USA. Now the argument would be is that, well, they let US Air merge with American, they let they let United and Continental merge, and why not do this again? Well, it's probably going to end up increasing prices again. So we'll see how it goes. Typically, again, based on what we were talking about earlier, corporate people win in these situations. So we'll see what happens.
So why are they doing it? To A, get rid of competition. B, they get the gate spaces, don't they? And C, they get the flying stock as well.
Exactly.
If they want it.
There's a pilot shortage. There's a flight attendant shortage. They get the aircraft because there's an aircraft shortage, and they get the pilots, and they repaint those yellow Spirit airplanes into JetBlue and put it all together.
Are the airlines responsible for the pilot shortage? I'd like to guess that they probably are.
Well, it's tough being an airline pilot, and it all goes on seniority, and it's all the number of hours you have with your particular airline. And, if you change airlines, you start at the bottom again. So that's why once you go with one airline and you sign up with them when you get out of school or whatever it's going to be, and it's the same thing with flight attendants, you stick with that airline pretty much for the rest of your life because you choose your trips based on how senior you are. And so, it's expensive to become a pilot, and you have to have 1,500 hours minimum to fly for a major airline, and you got to build those hours, and it costs a lot of money to build those hours. So, and even the Air Force isn't finding as many pilots as they like. I don't know. I guess it's not as attractive to people as it once was. But once you get up there, it pays pretty darn well.
All right. We promised some deals, so lay some deals on them, Micah.
Okay. How about Hawaii from Boston for, in basic economy, $441 round trip, nonstop.
Yeah,
the
but
longest domestic flight in the world.
But no one's going to do basic economy, are they? You don't even get to pick your seat.
Nope, but in regular economy, it's $561.
And what do you
Still
get
not
there?
a bad deal.
You get the option to pick your seat, which when you do will cost you at least $30, right?
No, I'm pretty sure with the regular economy, you can choose your seat based on what's open. You can choose whatever you want. It includes all taxes and all fees. It's round trip, $561 on Hawaiian Airline, and that's for travel dates between that's late April into early May.
What island does it say?
Let me see. I think that's Kona.
Okay.
Great coffee.
I don't know what I would do it seems like a long way to go to the beach to me. People love it. Charles lived there. He loved it. I'm speaking through ignorance, but in my imagination, which is all I have to go on, it just seems like the beach, and it seems like a long way to go to the beach.
Well, it's a beach. It's a rainforest. It's a volcano. Hawaii has many different areas. I have not been to Hawaii.
Puerto Rico has those things.
Puerto Rico has that too, and I can't find the deal to Puerto Rico right now, but there was some great deals going down to Puerto Rico as well on JetBlue.
Somebody got stabbed the other day in Puerto Rico. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did hear about that. But how about Copa Airlines to Sao Paulo, Brazil, in basic economy for $520 and regular economy for $620?
That's a deal.
Sao Paulo, that's not bad at all, and that's for travel again, late March into early April or late May.
What do you do there? What do you do in Sao Paulo?
I don't know. I would probably the song Brazil would be going through my head, and I'd be flying down to Rio. That's another movie.
The song Copa would be in my head because of the airlines.
There we go.
At the Copa.
Copacabana.
What else you got?
Well, how about a quick trip to Chicago on Southwest Airlines, and that's $118 round trip, including all taxes and fees.
I have not been to Chicago other than to get the train to go to Seattle, a big long train. So, 4 years ago or so, I just went to Chicago twice. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, it's different. It's weird.
Yeah, no, it's a great city, and this is for travel up until late April. You got to purchase 7 days in advance on Southwest, and you use the Southwest Flexible Date tool, which is great on their website. You know, Southwest you can only book on their website. It's not on Google Flights or any place. It's in the Chicago Midway, and $118 round trip. You know, you can go for the weekend. You can go for the day.
Good question here before you give us a couple more deals. Phil Kate asks, what site is Micah using to find these deals?
Oh, sometimes I go to flightdeal.com. Sometimes I'll go to Google Flights. Sometimes I'll look at Scott's Cheap Flights. There's some great sites out there.
Scott's Cheap Flights, what's that?
Scott's Cheap Flights is a subscription service, and you buy it, and they will send you the best deals coming out of your local airport. You can name 1 or 2 airports, and they will send them to you as they come up. There might be mistake deals, there might be short-term deals, and they'll send them to you.
How much is the subscription?
It's expensive.
How much?
I really don't remember right now, to be honest with you. I wish I could.
Like $10 or $100 annually?
Oh no, we're close to $100
per annum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want to fly in business class, then it's even more. So because you don't get the business class deals unless you sign up for the business class thing.
Business class. I've only flown. I flew Mint one time, which is
Mint is great.
Really first class, right?
Well, Mint is business class, and then there's the Mint Suites, which is really first class.
Yeah,
you
I
have
didn't
the whole
do that.
suite to yourself.
But I had my little pod. I was spoiled after that. And one time in the 80s, I got bumped. I did fly first class in American, but it didn't seem that special. The Mint seemed really special.
Yeah, Mint is really great.
Any more?
Let me give you one more. This is I think this is a pretty good one. This is on Delta, and it's Boston to Billund, Denmark. And basic economy is $487. Regular economy is $657, which is a little more. And those are for travel dates from November into early December. So you could go for Thanksgiving. You could. It's for Sunday through Wednesday departures and Tuesday through Friday returns. And Denmark is great that time of year. And from Denmark, you can actually. I think you can take the bridge into Sweden and drive through Copenhagen to Sweden. You can take the ferry up to Norway. It's a great stopping off point if you want to see the Northern Europe area.
Yeah, I think that is pretty cool. Oh, there's another thing that popped up that we discussed that this would be a good time to share. This is real information. So, some time ago, I planned a trip to Athens, and due to a surge in COVID there, I canceled. Had to cancel. Happily, I had cancel for any reason insurance. Third-party insurance. I'd never get it through the airline. Get the third-party insurance. And there are restrictions with cancel for any reason. You have to cancel before 48 hours out. And if you do cancel for any reason, without a covered reason, you only get 3/4 of your money back. But it wasn't that much to increase the insurance to be covered for any reason. So anyway, I was going to get 3/4 of my money back. I didn't want COVID. It wouldn't have been fun. I took a chance, and that's how it ended up. But it was a nightmare getting my money back, my 3/4. But I want to make something clear. It wasn't the insurance company. It was the airline. The airline was impossible to contact. And this is another problem I have with service. It's that all the airlines, to me, are giving us all the big middle finger, and we still fly with them. And that bums me out. I needed this information to get my money back. I was on, like you've been on hold for hours, multiple times.
Yep.
And with that horrible ass music, so you can't be doing anything else. It's maddening. And then
as they
finally,
continue to tell you, your call is very important to
Yeah,
us. Please
yeah.
stay on hold, and someone will be with you as soon as possible.
So finally, one day someone picked up like some miracle, and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you with that information. You got to go online." I went online. I did it. No response ever. Finally, I did get my money, but the hell was from the insurance, from the airline, not the insurance. But I had related my story to someone else who assumed that it was the insurance. So instead of getting the travel insurance, she opted to pay $500 more. Her airfare went from $1,300 to $1,800, so she could get a fare which allowed you to change tickets for no cost. And Micah and I discussed that, and that's a bad deal because insurance, flight insurance, would be less than that, and there's no medical coverage included with that. And I need to get the medical coverage when I fly because I really want the medical coverage and the evacuation insurance and the trip interruption insurance and the baggage and all kinds of little things. It's a pretty good deal. And the insurance companies, my experience with them was very good. It was the airlines that were the problem. So I now recommend certain third-party insurances for, it's not that much money. Well, to me, anyway, and where I am in life, it's kind of worth it, especially for the medical insurance. So I talked a lot there. What do you think on that?
I completely agree with you. You know, the insurance is going to be maybe 10% of your trip. Maximum is what it's going to cost you. And I usually go to, there's a site called insuremytrip.com, which is an aggregator of different insurance policies. And you need to go through the policies and see what's covered and see what you're going to, how much it's going to be and what the coverage is for each individual thing, and then decide from there. And it's a great site, but you got to sort it out.
And you can call them. They pick up the phone.
Right.
Even at night. I called them once at 10 o'clock at night, and they picked up right away. They're extremely knowledgeable about the policies. You tell them what you need, they look up and see what insurance company has a policy for that.
They're great. And then there's a particular insurance company themselves that does travel insurance. It's called Allianz, and I use them as well directly sometimes. I will just call them directly and or look them up directly and go there because they have some great policies, and their coverage has been very, very good, and they're very well known.
Sorry. Phil says that the call service is intentionally maddening. They want you to hang up.
Well, this is what I'll say, and I agree. The airline call service is terrible, and we talked about my friend Brian. He's been on the phone for hours and hours and hours just to get through. On my way back from the UK the last time I was there, back when you had to have a COVID test to get through, although I had COVID and I had the letter from my doctor that I submitted, they still insisted that I have a test. I was on the phone from the UK from about 5 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the evening till 10 o'clock at night till I finally got through to someone. And then I was on the phone talking with them until about midnight, just trying to get it all resolved. But it's not just the airlines. Service, especially in the USA, of any kind is miserable, and we are accepting poorer and poorer service as the general public.
I will say that the airline that I had the nightmare with was not a U.S. airline. It was a European airline. So it's not just us. I guess we covered a lot of ground, Micah.
We did, and it's always a lot of fun.
Can you tell us again your sources for deals?
Yeah, one of them that I use is Scott's Cheap Flights. Again, that's a subscription service, but it's a very good one. It's very reputable. They've been around for a long time. I always go to Google Flights and check things out there and see what's going on. And then another one that I like to use sometimes is called the Flight Deal, and I'll see what's going on with them. And those are the ones that I really like. And then I just always keep my eyes open.
Yeah, you do keep your eyes open. And one final question. It used to be, and I used to have good luck with this theory, that flight fares would drop a little bit about 3 weeks out, and then bump up again closer than that. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Am I correct?
Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. The airlines are really full. You know, over COVID, they put a lot of ships in the aircraft into mothballs. A lot of pilots disappeared. So the airplanes are really, really full. There's not a lot of empty seats on them. So the availability is tight, and that means the prices go up. But I keep an eye on it. You can also, with Google Flights, one of the things I like about it is that you can set up a fare alert. So you look for the airline that you want, you set up a fare alert, and it'll email you every day when anytime it goes up, anytime it goes down, and let you know. But the big thing is this, and we were going to talk about one thing that we need to get back to, but this is very important. I'm sure you remember the old song. It was played over and over and over again, probably back in the 1980s, a Stevie Winwood song, who, by the way, was, that's another story. Let me go back. The Stevie Winwood song, When You See a Chance, Take It. Yeah. I kind of revised that to When You See a Fare, Take It. If you see a low fare to a place that you think you want to go, buy it, because it's just going to go up. You're going to get stuck with it. This has happened to friends of mine. They wanted to go to Thailand, and I found them a fare to Thailand in business class, round trip for $2,800, which was an incredible deal. Yeah. And my friend said, let me think about it. Let me talk to my wife, and I'll see what I can do. And he gets back to me the next day, and it's $3,200. And I say, you got to move on. He says, well, it went up. Let me check with her. And he gets back to me, and it's $6,000. So when you see the fare, grab the fare.
I don't know the rhyme or reason to the algorithm, but now that it's computers deciding airfare, and the computers will change the airfare radically from one moment to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all.
Who knows why? Also, I'm convinced that if you check an airfare and you go to the same place and check it again, it will go up because they know that you are interested.
Well, that's another secret that I will tell people, is that before you go and you check your airfare, clear your cookies. Even if you go into a private browsing session, go into the private browsing session, close it again, and open it up. Clear the cookies, because they will see exactly that you've looked at it before. Every time you go on a website, it deposits a cookie into the little cache. Clear that cache, clear them out. In fact, airfares, as well as southern places where you shop, if they see that you're on an Apple computer, on a Mac, prices will be higher, because they figure if you're on a Mac, you can afford it than it will be if you're on a Chromebook or on a Windows computer. So always clear your cookies before you go there, and you're probably better off using Firefox or Chrome as opposed to Safari, because Safari is I
never liked Safari.
Product.
Never used it. Always hated it.
I use it on my iPhone, but I don't use it on my computer.
Okay. Well, we better leave some gas in the tank, some powder for next time. We haven't talked a lot, so we had a lot of catching up to do. This was fantastic. People, share this. Will you do me the personal favor and share it? Also, I did, Micah and everyone, I did create a couple new YouTube channels. So I now have 5. You're supposed to keep them very specific, and they are supposed to only relate to what you say it's related to. So they're kind of niched now. There's one that just has videos of original music and original videos, called Bradley J Music. There's another one called Bradley J's Boston, which is specific to all things Boston. And we're going to do restaurants and We're going to go inside of restaurants and historical sites as well. That's so I'm busy. Anything you want to plug? You, of course, airplanegeeks.com.
AirplaneGeeks.com. The newest episode is out as we're recording this today on Wednesday. What is today? The 8th, I think. And the journeyisreward.org. That's the journey of my good friend Brian getting his lifetime 1K status, 3 million miles on United. He's in Japan right now, should be coming back soon, and then he's off to South Africa. And on that return flight from South Africa, he should be hitting that 3 million mile mark.
Micah from Maine has a real ring to it. Really flows. It flows better than Brian from Pasadena. Okay. That's fantastic. I'll talk to you real soon.
Take care. Great being on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's end this thing.